Hello everyone, it's Matt from Keystroke Games again, and this is going to be a replacement of an old tutorial called Pro Tutorial Number 1, Adding Mouse Controls to Your Shooter. Since I've recorded that tutorial, I've learned a lot more about what I was trying to teach in that tutorial, so I should be able to do a lot better job now showing you what I was trying to do than I did before. So this will be a replacement tutorial for that old one. Before we get started, I'd like to tell you to watch this tutorial right here, Advanced Tutorial Number 6, because it will help you set up your project for today's tutorial, since there's some prerequisite skills you're going to need to do this. Now, this is a long process of tutorials I'm going to be making on how to make a side-scrolling shooter. A side-scrolling shooter is basically when you look at your player from the side and you can control his arm movement with your mouse and his leg movement with your arrow keys or WASD. So this is a fairly early step in any side-scrolling shooter game you're going to make, so it's an important tutorial. So the sprites you're going to need for our first step, in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to add walking animations to a basic 2D player. So right now we have our player right and our player left, which are completely still, only one sum image each. And then we have our player facing right walking forwards, our player facing right walking backwards, our player facing left walking forwards, and our player facing left walking backwards. Now, what I'm about to show you how to do is called a 4-point animation system. And what it does is, for side-scrolling shooters, it's the most common system that almost every game uses, that there's 4 different possibilities of animations to use, which you can see with our right forward, right backwards, left backwards, and we're going to be integrating all 4 of those animations into a program. So first of all, we need to do some initialization of variables in our player. So to start off, what we're going to do is, in the A key and the D key, or you could have right or left arrow keys, we're going to add a new variable, and I'm going to call it moving underscore left. And this is moving underscore left because this is the A key, which is left, the D key is right. So for the A key, I'm going to set moving left to 1, and I'm going to set moving underscore right to 0. These are 2 variables we're going to use in our main program in a second. Now I'm going to copy these 2 variables, and I'm just going to paste them into the D key. And I'm going to set moving left to 0 and moving right to 1. So now we always know what direction we're moving in. Now you're going to learn that there's a difference between moving in a direction and pointing in a direction, which I'll explain in a second. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to add a new event, a key release of whatever keys you use to move your player. So in my case it's A and D, but it could also be your right and left arrow keys. So I'm going to add an event, release key of A, and under this event I'm going to set a variable called still to 1. And then I'm going to add another event, key release of the letter D, which is my other movement key, and I'm going to also set still to 1 on that event. So now we know when we're still, and we know when you're moving. So now we know what direction we're moving in, but we don't know what direction we're pointing in. So we're going to have a new code block in our player. Now this is where we're going to do all our programming in this tutorial. So just try to follow along. So first we're going to say if mouse underscore x is greater than player dot x. And I do believe we capitalize player, so we're going to have to remember that. So this is saying if the mouse is to the right of the player, that means that we are going to be facing right. So I'm going to say facing underscore, actually we want to make this a global variable, so I'm going to say global dot facing underscore right equals 1, and global dot facing underscore underscore left equals 0. So if the mouse is to the right of the player, we're going to be facing right towards it, and we're not going to be facing left. Now I'm going to say else, put in my curly brackets again, and I'm going to copy these two terms right here, paste them in, and just switch them. So if you're not facing left, if you're not facing right, you're always facing left, which works fine. So now we have 4 new variables, or actually 5, and they are, the 4 new variables are what direction we're facing and what direction we're moving, which is very important. So now we need to do a little bit more initialization, so we're going to add our create event to our player. And we're going to set some more variables. Now you'll see why we're doing this later, but for now just kind of copy what I'm doing. So we're going to set variable right underscore forward to 1. We're going to set variable right underscore backward to 2. I'm going to set variable left underscore forward to 3. And we're going to set variable left underscore backward to 4. And we're going to set variable still equals 5. Now actually, action underscore still equals 5. Now this probably won't make any sense to you right now, but it will make sense later, so just follow along, make sure you have all this, and then we have all the variables we need to start the actual program that controls the animation of our player. So back in the main code of our player, I'm going to space down a little bit, and then I'm going to put 2 slashes, which means it's a comment. This is just to help you understand. I'm going to say facing right, moving right. So we're both facing right and moving right in this instance. So I'm going to say if global dot facing right equals 1, put in my brackets, and then I'll tab in 1, and I'll say if moving underscore right equals 1, put my brackets, and then I'll say action equals right underscore forwards. Now what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, we're facing right, keep going. We're moving right, keep going. Now we're setting a variable called action to right forwards, which if you remember is one of the variables we just defined in the create event. Now I'll explain why we're doing this in a second. So after we have the action, we're going to do another if. We're going to say if action exclamation point equal sign last underscore action. Now this little exclamation point equals is a programming thing that means not equals. So if action does not equal last action, more curly braces, and then I'm going to say sprite underscore reset equals 1. Then I'm going to space down 1 from that little if, and then I'm going to say if sprite underscore reset equals 1, more curly braces, then I'm going to say sprite underscore index. Now this is the actual line of the code where we actually assign the animation. So since this is facing right, moving right, we want to set it to player underscore right underscore forwards. So that's where we actually set our animation. Now, here's where it's going to start coming all together. So we want to set alarm number, I believe we haven't used any alarms, so I'm just going to say alarm number 0 like that. And we want to set alarm number 0 to, and let's close our code for a second. Now, you want to set this alarm to the length of your animation. So my player right forwards is exactly 8 some images long, which you can see here in the sprite data. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to set alarm 0 to 8. And then after that, our last part is we're going to set sprite underscore reset equals 0. So now, let me just explain to you really fast what this does so you're not completely lost and you have some understanding. So this line right here, sprite index equals player right forwards, is where we actually assign the animation to the object. And what would happen if we didn't have all this extra stuff here and we just said if facing right equals 1, if moving right equals 1, set the sprite? What would happen is it would set that sprite every single step, and we'd always be stuck on the first frame of the animation, which I guarantee if you've tried to do a walking animation in GameMaker and you don't have any experience, you're going to end up with that problem. You're going to say, what the heck is going on? Well, what you need to do is you need to set an alarm in a variable similar to sprite reset. And what we're doing is you can only apply this sprite if it's been 8 frames since you last applied it. So every 8 frames, if you're still facing right and moving right, it will reapply this sprite. So what the effect we get is it's basically applying the sprite every time it plays through once instead of every single step, which would come out with a graphics error. So I don't expect you to understand this perfectly, but you should understand the concept of what it's doing. When you become more experienced in programming GameMaker, I'm sure you'll have no problem understanding what this actually does. But for now, I'm just showing you how to do it so I can help you understand. So, as you remember, I said it was a 4-point animation system. So this is one of our points right here. Facing right, moving right. Excuse me. So, the next one we're going to do, we're going to comment again. We're going to say facing right, moving left. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this entire thing and we're going to paste it down here. Now we just can't do that. We need to change a few things. So we're still facing right, but we're moving left. So we're going to say if moving left equals 1. And here, let me just tab down a little bit so you can see better. So I'm going to say if moving left equals 1, I'm going to say action equals right underscore backwards. And we can keep all of this the same because our animation is still 8 frames. Now your backwards animation may be longer, so you may need to change this alarm. But other than that, the only other thing we need to change is we need to change what sprite we're actually applying. So we're going to apply player right underscore backwards. Now this is our second point. So once you have the first point done, the rest goes really fast. Then you can just say facing left, moving left, and I'm just going to take all this code here, paste it here, and we're going to say if facing underscore left equals 1, if moving left equals 1, action equals left underscore forwards, and down here we're going to set sprite index to player underscore left underscore forwards. Sorry about that. I have a bit of a cold if you couldn't tell, so I'm just having some coughing going on. So that's 3 out of 4 points done. 1 more point left. We're going to say comment facing left, moving right. And we're going to copy all of this code here, paste it down. We're going to say if facing left equals 1, if moving underscore right equals 1, action equals left underscore backwards, and we're going to set this to left underscore backwards also. So now we have our 4 points of our system right here, and they're all pretty similar. So if you have one mistake in one of them, you're probably going to end up with 4 mistakes. So just be careful to make sure that you don't have any small mistakes. And there's only one thing left that we need to do, and that is deal with the variable we defined called still. So because basically what we have set up now will constantly be moving. Our player will look like it's always moving even when we're not actually moving. So that's why I added that event called still. So now, all the way at the bottom here, we're going to set moving underscore right equals 0. Moving underscore left equals 0. And then I'm going to say if still equals 1. Here, let me move this down so you can see better. If still equals 1, curly brackets. Then I'm going to say if global dot facing underscore right equals 1, curly brackets. And then I'm going to, inside that if, I'm going to say sprite underscore, underscore index equals player underscore right, which is our still sprite. Now I'm just going to put an else here, and then I'm going to put sprite underscore index equals player underscore left. So if we're still, it will assign the two still sprites. Now, after this else, but still inside of our if still, we want to put one more statement, which is action equals action underscore still. And then at the very end of all this code, past everything, just put last underscore action equals action. So I think I've explained everything pretty well except for this action variable. Now what action does is, you know how I said that it only lets you reset the sprite every 8 frames, or 8 steps in GameMaker. So what we need to do to avoid another problem is if we're moving right and 4 frames go by and then we want to switch to moving left, it's going to say, oh, well, 8 frames haven't gone by, so you can't change. So that's why I added in the if action is not equal to last action. So it will completely disregard the timer if you're switching from one action to another. Now that's what it's doing. I don't expect you to understand it, as I don't expect you to understand most of the stuff in this tutorial, but I hope that eventually you'll be able to understand it once you understand what it actually does. So the action variables make it so that you can, whenever you switch from, let's say, standing still to moving right, or from moving right to moving left, it completely disregards our timer that keeps the sprites right and just goes straight to changing the sprite. This makes it so there's no graphics errors or there's no pauses in between our animations. So, lastly, I think we are done our... No, there's one step that I forgot, and I knew I was going to forget it. So we set this alarm to 8. Oops. We set this alarm to 8 in all these instances. Now I actually need to define what happens at that alarm. So I'm going to say add event alarm. And at this alarm, I'm just going to drag down a variable. I'm going to say sprite underscore reset equals 1. So when that alarm goes off, it's just going to say, okay, it's all right to reset the sprite now. Or as the other program does, when the action is not the same as it was before, it's okay to reset the sprite. So I hope you understand what we just did. And, well, I guess let's see how it works. I hope I didn't make any mistakes. I just have a simple room set up right now with a player and some floors. So let's see how this works. Okay guys, sorry about that little jump in the video there, but as I launched the game I realized that I forgot an important step. I knew I was going to forget something because this process is so long, but hopefully this will be the last fix. So back in our player object under the create event, we want to add a little bit more code. So after all these variable initializations, we want to add this code. We want to say still equals 1. And then we want to say if global dot facing underscore right equals 1, curly brackets. And then we want to say all these things. We want to say global Nope, sorry. We want to say moving underscore right equals 0, moving underscore left equals 0, and sprite underscore index equals player underscore right. So this is just repeating what we did in the still event, but we want to do it in the create event also, so when our player just starts, he will be all ready to go. So I'm just going to copy this down here. Oops. That is not what I meant to do. I meant to take this line. Okay, so now we have these two lines, and I want this to be player underscore left. So we have if global.facing right equals 1, blah, 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 else, blah, 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 and make sure that right and left. And then lastly, we want to say sprite underscore reset equals 1. And the last fix we need to make is that in the A and D keys, I forgot to tell you to add this, which is a block set variable still to 0. You want to put that block in both of your movement events. Excuse me. So after you have both those fixes made, let's try launching our game again. So you can see that just standing here, our player will face towards the mouse, which is exactly what we wanted. He'll stay in his still form. And if we start moving, he'll walk right. So first let's test our 4-point direction system. So I'm going to put my mouse on the right side of him, and I'm going to move right. It plays the correct walking animation. Now I'm going to move left. It plays him walking backwards. Now let's try the left. I'm going to walk forwards. Shows him walking forwards. And I'm going to put my mouse on the right, and it shows him walking backwards. Oh, I did that wrong. And it shows him walking backwards. So all 4 points of our system are working. And this is the first tutorial in a series of tutorials that will show you how to create your own side-scrolling shooter. But this is a very complicated yet awesome way to add walking animations to your shooter. So I guess that's it for this tutorial. See you later, guys, and have fun with GameMaker.